Before we get started, I'd just like to announce that we are now accepting applications for the Analyst Training Program. It took a little bit longer than we anticipated to get everything ready because we have been working on moving as much of the application process as possible online to make it more convenient for people who are applying. One significant change that we're making is that even when it's safe to move to in-person classes, the Analyst Training Program will work on a hybrid model where 5 out of the 9 training weekends during a given training year will be online. This is to reduce travel expenses and to make it easier for people to fit analytic training into their lives. So if you'd like to learn more about the program and perhaps to apply, just go to jungchicago.org/ATP or click the link in the description of this episode. Thanks. Welcome to the Jungian Anthology podcast from the C.G. Jung Institute of Chicago. The Discipline to Stay with the Symbol. Interview with Director of Training Warren Sibilla. In this episode, Patricia Martin interviews Warren W. Sibilla Jr., Jungian Psychoanalyst and the new Director of Training for the C.G. Jung Institute of Chicago's Analyst Training Program. How does someone know they are ready for training? What is the process of development in training like? What does Jungian analysis and study bring to someone's life and practice? Dr. Sibilla is an athlete who competes in endurance sports like the Ironman and Spartan obstacle race. How has this discipline manifested in Dr. Sibilla's own analytic practice? And does that lead to a particular framing about the practice of psychology and analysis? Warren Sibilla Jr., PhD, is a diplomate Jungian psychoanalyst with a clinical practice in Chicago, Illinois, and South Bend, Indiana. Dr. Sibilla served as the director of the clinical training program at the Institute and is the incoming director of training. He is engaged in the study and practice of Zen Buddhism, including authoring a book on the relationship between Zen Buddhism and analytical psychology, as well as a paper formally exploring Jung's 1958 dialogue with Japanese Zen master and philosopher Hisamatsu. He is the author of My Journey to Ironman, Endurance Sports as a Means to Individuation. Dr. Sibilla teaches in the master's and doctoral programs at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology and the Institute for Clinical Social Work and facilitates silent contemplative retreats at Gilchrist Retreat Center in Michigan. And before we get to the interview, I just want to read a submission from a listener. Joshua from Santa Ynez, California says, I am a recently licensed marriage and family therapist on paternity leave and taking small steps to develop a private practice. I have been practicing as a therapist since 2014 and spent the latter half of my 20s and 30s attending Fuller Theological Seminary and working for a local coffee roaster in Pasadena, California. I grew up in Western North Carolina and returned there in 2015 to reconnect with the soul of my ancestors. But I left again to make a third cross-country move to work in a treatment center for eating disorders located in Santa Barbara. Several of my colleagues were attending Pacifica, and I had a previous therapist from Pacifica. Through these dear people, I became invigorated by conversations about depth psychology and Jung. I sought out a Jungian analyst in 2019 and have been working with her ever since. I stumbled onto this podcast when looking to fill my podcast and audiobook queue for my commute to work. I first heard Robert Moore's lecture, Mythology of the Great Self Within, about a year ago. I was hooked. I purchased that series from you all and never miss a podcast. My plan is to attend a Jungian Institute in the nearest future to pursue training and certification as a Jungian analyst, in conjunction with my personal path towards differentiation and conscious living. I love what I get to do as a therapist, partner, parent, and just as a human member of a universal ecosystem. I appreciate that this podcast clarifies, enhances, and deepens my psychological experiences and relationships. If you'd like to share something about yourself, just click the link in the show notes. You can support this free podcast by making a donation, becoming a member of the Institute, or making a purchase in our online store. Your support enables us to provide free and low-cost educational resources to all. So now here's the interview.
Hello, and welcome to Jungian Psychoanalyst, the podcast of the C.G. Jung Institute of Chicago. I'm Patricia Martin, and I'll be your host today. I'm a professional affiliate at the Institute, and today I'm speaking with Warren Sibilla Jr., a PhD and a clinical psychologist and diplomate Jungian psychoanalyst who practices in South Bend, Indiana, and Chicago, and now is the director of the Analyst Training Program. He's also a proud foster parent of rescued dogs. Warren is here today to discuss what it means to choose the path to become a Jungian analyst and the difference it makes professionally and, of course, personally. Welcome, Warren. It's good to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And first of all, I'm so curious because I've always wondered this, and I think you're just the right person to ask. I see marathoners, I see these long distance runners, and I wonder, all that time out there running or doing an Ironman, what is going through a person's head?
Yeah, well, it depends. But I found that at its best, it's a meditation.
Really?
And the way to survive and in fact thrive is to see it as a long meditation. If you stayed only focused on the body or the pain, then of course it becomes very limiting. But if you see it as a relationship with the spirit and a meditation, then much more becomes possible.
That's very interesting because I do find that some people I see as they run and they're a little scrunched up in the face, and others are very relaxed. Their faces are very relaxed. So I'm wondering, that's probably the differentiator,
Right.
Is somebody has taken themselves into sort of a meditation. That's so interesting. So I wanted to ask you, Warren, I want to talk more about the Analyst Training Program, but I think at its heart is depth psychology. And there are a lot of different schools of thought about psychoanalytic work, but I think Carl Jung was very specific about the kind of work that he found to be useful and successful with his patients, and adherents to that school of thought believe in depth psychology. So let's start there. Tell me, first of all, what it means. There are people listening to this who know what it means, but there are people, we have listeners from all over. So talk a little bit about depth psychology and what it means to a patient, analysand, I should say.
But it depends. Broadly speaking, there are two groups of individuals that come to analysis. The first is an individual who may have heard something about Jung or analytical psychology, saw a lecture, read an article or something, and it piqued their interest, and they want to look further. The second group is an individual who's had an experience of the psyche and has not found any place, any institution in which to make sense of that experience. And they come to analysis as an environment that will honor that experience and help them to grow into that.
And so is that to say then that for either one of those analysands, what they're really coming to the table with when they enter into analysis is a yearning for something, a yearning to be understood, a yearning to develop something from a going deeper process? Is that how I should understand it?
Indeed, it's always a search for meaning. Jung defined the symbol as the best possible explanation for what is as yet not understood. a very fancy way of saying that the symbol is always a half a step ahead. And so at its best, analysis teaches a discipline of staying with the symbol and letting it unfold, because as soon as it unfolds, then it moves a half a step ahead again, and then a half a step ahead. And it's developing the relationship with the symbol, whether it's from a dream, whether it's from active imagination, whether it's from the car ride home from work, wherever the symbol appears, it's at its best is fostering a discipline to stay with the symbol.
I see. So our symbols are drawn from our dreams all the time. I think everyone has that experience. I'm fascinated about this business of the car ride home. You know, when one's mind is somewhat at peace and, you know, you might be on automatic pilot. Tell me more about how those symbols appear and when a person should know to pay attention to it. I don't think all of us are as tuned in as we should be. So I'm curious about this.
But Jung says, he defines in the visions seminars, paraphrasing slightly, he says that the unconscious is that which affects me immediately every day. Which is to say that the unconscious is not a static noun that's over there. The unconscious is immediately and omnipresent. And therefore, it invites a whole different relationship to the psyche. In other words, the unconscious isn't just that which happens to us from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. when we wake up and we come out of the unconscious. The unconscious is with us 24 hours. And so it's then, I said, you know, a patient discipline to stay with the symbol. Equally, it's having a relationship with that symbol throughout the 24 hours of the day.
So now we've talked about how a patient, an analysand would, you know, turn to depth psychology. And you broke that down into two types, which was really helpful. Now I'm curious about the other side of the coin. So what makes someone who, you know, might have training as a counselor, or they might, you know, have training as in psychology, and now they want to take their training to another level. So what kind of person shows up? When does the message seem to arrive? Is there any consistency in why someone turns to the Analyst Training Program at the Jung Institute in Chicago?
I maintain that analysts are born, which is to say, we don't train analysts. There's not a prescription that says do this, this, and this, and stir, and you get analyst. On the contrary, it's my belief that an analyst is born, and therefore the best that we can do is to create and foster an environment in which we assist the self, capital S, in realizing its fullest potential. And the Analyst Training Program, whether it's Chicago or New York or Zurich or anywhere, is the most comprehensive training for a psychotherapist worldwide. So it requires a great deal of discipline and deep relationship with the self.
It's an 8-year program, isn't it?
Well, technically,
Mm-hmm.
a person could finish in 4 years. Unlikely, because of
Good to know. right?
Right. Unlikely because all that it requires of a person, emotionally, psychologically, physically, financially, so forth. And it's equally likely to take longer because there's a close study of the unfolding of the self. And so I think probably the average is 6 to 7 years.
That's a
And
big commitment.
well, it is. And that should be also understood that that comes on the heels of a graduate education.
Right.
So at a minimum, the person has been at postgraduate study for up to a decade.
So, with this kind of commitment in mind, talk to me about the graduates. Talk to me about the people who go through the program. And you went through the program yourself several years ago. And so now that you've had all this practice, you can speak from your own experience, but you can also speak from the experience of the people who have gone through the program in the Institute. How does it mark a person to have that experience, make that commitment, develop that discipline? How does it change the way they practice?
Well, I can just say for myself, I mean, I'm finding it hard to even put into words. My experiences in training and then after training, the dreams that I've had have taken me around the world many times.
So it truly is a journey from beginning, middle to the end.
Indeed. I've found myself as a consequence of following the dreams in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, working with a Peruvian shaman. I found myself in Kyoto, Japan, delivering a paper at the International Congress. I found myself in Kuznakt. I found myself in Bollingen, in going through the tower, Jung's tower. And I've had the great fortune of working with many rich, wonderful analysans that have, deepened the work. So it's life-changing, life-enriching. I can't imagine. I should say that I joked in my book that I've been at this for some time. My last name, Sibilla, comes from the Italian Sibyl. And the Sibyls were women who were diviners, who told the future and interpreted dreams, and were so important that Michelangelo painted two in the corners of the Sistine Chapel. So I don't know that it would be possible for me to do anything else, frankly.
You were born to do this work.
I was.
Yes.
And
that has to be a
is,
wonderful feeling.
Well, that's the nature of the self, though. It unfolds if you are patient and take the time and create a space for it, then it unfolds.
So it's sounding like an experience like the ATP, the Analysis Training Program, it's initiating something in your life. It's initiatory, as we would say. You're not sure what you're initiating. That's yet to unfold.
Right. I imagine the amount of trust that takes. Yes, it's initiatory with a capital I.
So how is that trust that someone invests, as well as their resources and their time, how is that trust met on the other end by the program? What does the program do to support someone who's going through the training?
Well,
Emotionally, professionally?
I would say a few things. One, there is the personal analysis. And our institute, like many, not all, but like many, the analysis is a sacred container, which is to say there's no communication between analyst and the ATP, except to acknowledge the person has attended this many hours. That's a sacred, separate space. And so that holds the candidate. They have their case consultation, and then later that matures into control supervision. That differs from analysis because there is a report, but nonetheless, that holds the person. And then we have some incredibly gifted, rich, and wonderful teaching analysts that essentially volunteer their time. Going through the Analyst Training Program is hard enough. Teaching Jung is no small feat. And these candidates are incredibly intelligent, well-read, well-motivated. So this is a tall task to step up and teach. Nonetheless, the teaching analysts are just otherworldly, incredible. And then finally, you have the relationship with the self that is you're initiated into, and that holds you.
That's a lifelong relationship. Yeah, I understand. So, Warren, now I'm curious about your moment when you decided it's time to step into something richer, deeper, more deeply committed. What was that moment for you when you decided to seek analyst training in the Jungian tradition?
Well, I remember it very distinctly, and I wrote about it in my book. The second year of my undergraduate, when I started taking courses, got the prerequisites out of the way the first year, and then started taking courses in psychology. And second course I took was a course on personality theory. And the first week they introduced the class and talked about Freud. The second week they talked about Jung. And I just remember that, I completely disassociated. I went somewhere. It just made such complete sense to me. And I was still kind of daydreaming, caught when the lecture ended. And the professor came over and said something, and I just said, that was incredible. I had never heard anything like that before. And he said, well, maybe you want to join the Friends of Jung group here down the road. They have wine and cheese on Sunday afternoons and bring in an analyst and they talk about Jung. Yeah, I think you could probably be a student member. So I did. And Robert Moore was the first presenter, and that was when he was still working out the lectures on his book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, I believe is the title. And I realized from that point forward, this is what I'm going to do. And I talked to my undergraduate advisor, and he said, okay, good plan. I agree with you, but you need to get your PhD first. After that, I'm fully supportive of this. And it's wonderful advice. I treasure that to this day, and that's what I did.
It's interesting. We had on the podcast earlier this week Elizabeth Lesser, who was one of the co-founders of the Omega Institute.
Huh.
And one of the reasons she was eager to come and join us to chat about her most recent book was because when she was co-founding the Omega Institute, many of her best workshop leaders were Jungians.
Huh.
And she felt a debt of gratitude to Carl Jung and the institutes because the Jungians had been so generous with their wisdom in those early days.
Mhm.
And so I think that's another, having studied in the JSP program with you, in fact, I think that's one of my big takeaways about the cohort that the Institute gathers. You know, the type of person that comes into that institution to do more learning my experience was a certain kind of person. They were deep, they were thoughtful, they were caring, they were generous with their wisdom and their time and their listening. And I mean, it really is, as a cohort goes, it was one of the best collegial experiences I've ever had in my professional life. And so I'm only imagining that's times 10 in the ATP, because it's a longer period and it's a deeper commitment. Do I have that right?
Yes, indeed. And it fosters a deep sense of gratitude. And I think the quintessential example of that is the degree to which all of these senior analysts continue to give back, to volunteer, to teach, to lead, and to continue the whole project forward.
I think that's what makes that whole world go round in Jung land. You know, if there is such in the realm of people who are adherents and believers in the work of Carl Jung and his worldview, I think it's very true that, you know, it's a deep commitment that one gets brought into. And I'm pretty sure you must be very excited about the next session. And I wonder, you know, as you take the helm of that, everybody brings something different to it. What are you looking forward to bringing to the program as you enter the directorship?
Well, the first thing I have to say is, on the shoulders of giants. Wonderful, talented individuals who've had the helm prior to me. So hats off. And what I hope to bring, a continuing commitment to the rigorous curriculum, an enormous amount of time over the years has been spent on the curriculum. And it is by far the most thoughtful, comprehensive curriculum. And we continue, in the training committee meetings, continue to think about and talk about, what are we getting right? What are we not getting right? What do we need to improve? What do we need to be reading? Who do we need to be bringing in? What's going to be most useful? So I hope to be able to continue all of that. And I hope to continue to foster a deep relationship with the self and the dream.
Wonderful. So how many students do you limit this to? Let me talk just about some, mechanics here. For anybody who's listening out here and is saying, oh, this sounds like this is for me. This is their moment, right? When they're saying, this is for me. So what can they expect in terms of how many students they'll be in the course with? How does the curriculum unfold? Can we talk a little bit about those things?
Sure. The incoming cohort always varies from as little as one or two to, for instance, this incoming cohort, we have 10. And that necessarily ebbs and flows. I would say on average, usually there's 3 to 4 to 5. The way that the program unfolds, you start there's a series of interviews. Everything is done by way of committee and interviews. So there would be a series of interviews determining by the admissions committee, determining if you're a good fit, assuming that the person is a good fit and they are brought in. Excuse me. They start as a matriculated auditor.
What does that mean, a matriculated auditor?
Well, we're using a lot of terms that today might seem antiquated. For example, propedeuticum, a Greek word.
Wow.
Greek denomination.
Bless you.
And because that's what the original Jung Institute used. So many of these are being carried over. Matriculated auditor means it's a year of feeling one another out. The person gets to have the full experience of the program. The program gets to have the full experience of the person. And at the end of that year, there's a decision on both sides. Is this a goodness of fit? Is it fit? Is it what you want? Assuming that it is, they're moved into candidacy stage. And they remain in the candidacy stage until they take the propedeuticum, a series of exams, both written and oral, that covers the breadth of the practice of analytical psychology. And it's necessary to pass that to move to the next stage, which is the control stage. And that's where your work with your analysands deepens. Your work supervision moves from case consultation to control supervision. It becomes another forum of analysis. And the transference, countertransference dynamics are especially studied. And the control stage culminates in the final exams, which are a written thesis, which is defended, and your control stage cases being presented. Typically, there are two, and they're written up extensively, and you present those cases and defend your work. And as I said earlier, typically for most individuals, I think the average is about 6 to 7 years to go through that.
It sounds very rigorous, but it also sounds like it's a deep dive into yourself, into your own understanding of the self. And so I can only imagine that it's a great unfolding from within that people experience at the same time. Is there a way that people find themselves capturing that or expressing that near the end of the program?
Oh, certainly. But we should be clear that the journey includes the darkness as well as the light. So as not to over romanticize it, they're very tough moments, necessarily so. And I've said many times that I learned, however difficult, far, far more from being told no than I did from being told yes. For example, failing an exam. And although not pleasant in the moment, in hindsight, it certainly was necessary. And having to go back and retrace steps and pick up the pieces and go forward. It's not uncommon that a person would take a leave of absence, take a step, and it is just one step out. It's not 2 steps out. They're still connected with the program, but they're taking a step out. They're gathering their breath. They're picking up the pieces. They're sorting things out, finding the right path, recalibrating, recalculating, and then getting back up on the horse and going. So it is rigorous. It is tough. And yes, there's an incredible celebration at the end. Many, if not most, of the theses that are written are incredibly rich and celebrate that journey.
So in other words, be prepared to unzip your long bag of shadow that Robert Bly talked about in his little book on the shadow. Yes. Right. Well, listen, Warren, I want to ask you, because I ask everyone who comes on the podcast this question: what's next for Warren Sibilla? What are you working on now that you're excited about?
Well, the first answer always is, I don't know, because who knows what self has in store. A few things. I'm both my wife and I are very interested in our rose garden, and take delight in sitting out in the evening and working with our roses and our fostered dogs. I'm remain invested, put a lot of energy into my athletic training. Fortunate this year to have qualified for the national championships in California for Spartan obstacle course racing. And also finished second in a decafit competition in Illinois, and will likely qualify for their championships. So I try to stay busy, try to stay active.
I'd say so. And I'm wondering, now you have me really curious as we wrap up. Are you one of those guys who buries their rose bushes in the winter so that they don't freeze too much?
No.
Okay, good.
No, actually, it's also a kind of meditation and studying from the depth of winter, where you can almost be certain that the plant has died, the bush has died, and then slowly it greens in the spring, and then it comes to life in the summer, and then all folds and withers into the fall.
Well, Warren, it's been a pleasure, and let many flowers bloom in your life. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
This podcast is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. Share it all you like, as long as you maintain the attribution to the speaker, but please do not change it or sell it. If you like this episode, tell your friends about us or leave us a review on iTunes. For more information about classes, training programs, videos, audio, this podcast, or to find a Jungian analyst near you, visit our website, www.jungchicago.org. Thank you to our 2020 donors who gave at the contributing member level and above: Barbara Anand, Usha and Ashok Beatty, Jackie Cabe Bryan, Eric Cooper and Judith Cooper, Kevin Davis, George J. Didier, Mary Doherty, James Fidelibus, John Korolewski, Marty Manning, Diane Sherwood, Deborah P. Stutzman, Deborah Tobin, Alexander Wayne and Lynn Kopp, Gerald Weiner, Karen West and James Taylor, and Ellen Young. If you would like to join our generous community of supporters, just go to jungchicago.org/give.